Okay. So, anyways, I'm having a discussion with somebody on BitChute, and I have nothing against this person at all. I actually, the guy's name is, or whoever, Kekistani Consulate. I have nothing against him at all, and I appreciate him as a someone on BitChute, because whoever this person is kind of actually engages, which is kind of rare. And also this Kekistan Consulate guy or whoever likes to challenge me sometimes, which is good. We all need to be challenged, and so I do appreciate it. Anyways, so it starts off with this comment. First off, I'll admit I am not a fan of liberals. The best explanation I can give is to reference a Malcolm X quote, where Malcolm X said that the liberals are more dangerous than the conservatives. Both of them are bad, but the liberals are worse. And so that's my basic general stance on politics and regarding liberals. So with that, let's go into this real quick. Isn't the liberals' whole point to be a leaderless movement? The 2011 Occupy Wall Street pitch to the people was just that, a leaderless movement. And oh god, dude. Anyways, I gotta deal with, anyways, this is a whole other video, man. I do not get what the fuck. Oh my god, dude. I've got these witches coming up again and again. They just keep coming over here. This is a fucking problem, dude. I can't. Anyways, whatever. So all of them fucking witches, man. Them fucking witches are just everywhere in this fucking shithole town, dude. I can't get away from these fucking witches, dude. It's fucking pissing me off. So anyways, back to this. So basically what this is about is the Occupy movement of 2011, 2012. And so I was just kind of reminiscing on the days of Occupy, where it was the same thing during Occupy. It was all this same two wings of the same bird, no matter who wins, you lose. It's all that same crap. And it's a completely liberal, it's like a more extreme, what do you call it? More, the extreme liberal. It's more of the extreme liberal view. That's what the whole two wings of the same bird is. And I'm not a fan of the liberal thing. So I just kind of pointed this out, and see, because a lot of people try to use this to hide their liberal ideology, that they're just liberals. There are a lot of liberals who won't even admit to themselves that they're a liberal. But they are, like, their actions speak louder than their words. There are people that are just liberals in everything but name, and they're just straight up liberals. And I go back again to what Malcolm X said: liberals are more dangerous than conservatives. I mean, that's just it. So if a person it's like that old saying: if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck and acts like a duck, it's a duck. So if a person walks like a liberal and talks like a liberal and acts like a liberal, but then they claim they're not a liberal, well, I'm sorry, but they're just a liberal. And that was my point. And I referenced the Occupy movement. And so Kekistan, he likes to challenge me some. So he said Occupy was never mainstream Democrats. They were arguably a reaction to the establishment left not doing what they wanted, which may be true, but it's still a liberal left. They're just far left. Occupy was just far left. That's all it was far left. And so I responded, I said it could be argued that much of Occupy was either created and or subverted to inject socialism and liberalism further into the mainstream. People argue that Occupy had a lot to do with securing Obama's second-term election. Much of the Occupy was populated the same as we see AstroTurf protest form today, paying people to participate through Craigslist ads and bussing them in. I know from firsthand experience this was happening at the local Occupy in my city at the time. Plenty of evidence shows it was a covert liberal Democrat-run event designed to look organic, though obvious to the more experienced, it appeared organic to the layman. In short, the outcome of Occupy was nothing more than a way to promote liberal ideology, whether through subversion, design, or a combination of the two. The outcome was to spread the virus of liberalism. It's pretty obvious. And then he responds, obvious, in the words of Inigo Montoya, you keep using that word. I don't think that word means what you think it means. If the majority of examiners do not detect something, referring to that thing as obvious seems a bit disingenuous. So he's saying that I'm being disingenuous. And so I just asked the simple question. So you participated in the Occupy protest? And I finally got a response. And of course I knew. He said, I did not, but I followed them closely. Okay, and this is where we go. This is where we go with debates. When people don't have experience, but they want to weigh in. And no offense to Kakistan, but this is so common where people without any experience want to weigh in as the experts. And so my response is, I did. And because I followed boots on the ground and was heavily involved daily for the first 2 weeks, starting from day one, I'm pretty confident I had a much more accurate pulse of what was actually taking place than anyone who wasn't actively participating. Getting people who weren't actual participants to believe my account of what was really going on would be difficult, as passive observers have a limited understanding of it compared to those like me who were actively involved. No offense, but I will stick with my account of events as an active participant to the account of those who passively observed. I know, my stupid lying eyes deceive me yet again. So I'm sorry to anyone that never participated in Occupy yet wants to weigh in as though they have some knowledge of the account of events of what happened with Occupy. But I'm going to rely more on my personal experience as opposed to their passive view of what they think Occupy was. I know what it was because I was there. I saw it, and it was happening nationwide. What was happening with what I saw was happening nationwide. Generally speaking, it was all the same. Okay, so with that, I would like to talk about my experience with Occupy. So my experience, I look like shit, I know. So my experience with Occupy was totally insane. Okay. So let me tell you what happened. All right. Okay. So my experience with Occupy, okay. At the time, I had worked in the homeless service provider field for 3 years already when Occupy took place. So as a street outreach worker, I had an opportunity as part of my job to go to the Occupy movement in Sacramento, California. So from day one, on the very first day of Occupy Sacramento, I was there. I made a sign. I went through the march. Okay. We marched all over downtown. And then we finally get back to what's the name of that park? We get back to the park downtown, Cesar Chavez Park. So we get back to the Cesar Chavez Park, okay? And then somebody had a bullhorn, and so and they were colored people and people of color and all this. So then they're talking on the bullhorn. They're saying, well, and they're talking about all this shit, racism and sexism and all this stuff, right? And so me, working in the homeless service provider field, I noticed they weren't talking about homeless people. They were talking about all these so-called disenfranchised people, but they weren't even mentioning the homeless. And a couple of years prior, the city of Sacramento had gotten international news because of how bad the homeless had gotten in Sacramento. And even Oprah Winfrey went to Sacramento and covered it, and that got international. So we got all this international attention just recently, like maybe a year prior to the Occupy. And, so, and even around that time, what the United Nations did like a 4-page report on Sacramento. Like, of all the entire U.S., they focused on Sacramento, and in a 4-page report to the government, they explained how it was a violation of human rights what Sacramento was doing to the homeless during that time. So homelessness was like the biggest thing in Sacramento. It was international news everywhere, everything. And so Occupy shows up, and I'm telling you, on the first day, you got all these people talking about how important racism is and sexism and all, but nobody's talking about the homeless thing at all. Like, equal rights for the homeless. No, it was all about equal rights for colored people and gay people and women. That's all it was. And so I'm standing there listening to all these people, and they're offering anybody else want to get up, and it was totally scripted. I could tell it was scripted. Like, other people that would come up and grab the bullhorn, they were all scripted. So they were offering the bullhorn to anybody, knowing that the only people that were going to grab it were the people who were scripted to grab the bullhorn and start talking. Or I believe it was a microphone. And so then people one after another, they're all scripted, staged actors coming up and talking more about racism and sexism and all these liberal talking points. And so I finally was like, fuck it. So the next time they asked if anybody else wanted to get up on the mic, I just walked up and grabbed it. And then and they were surprised, like, because this was totally off script. Bro, everything I'm telling you about what happened at Occupy is totally fucking true, dude. This is all totally true. And so I grabbed the mic and I started talking like I'd been working for this homeless organization for like 3 years. And then I started spitting all kinds of facts about the homeless issue. How I worked for a homeless youth organization. It was only like a 6-bed shelter. And it covered all of Sacramento, including every surrounding county, because there's no homeless services, and that there's all these fucking homeless youth everywhere and all these other homeless. I talked about how they had just taken all the money away from the winter overflow shelter, because people freeze to death in Sacramento, California. Homeless people freeze to death, believe it or not. And so the winter overflow, this was the first year I had ever seen them do it. They took the money from the winter overflow shelter. So there was no winter overflow shelter for that winter. And that they were pumping fucking millions of dollars into a Sacramento Kings basketball arena. And so I'm just spitting fact after fact and talking about the unconstitutional policing of homeless, how homelessness is criminalized, and that these people are experiencing severe inequality and nobody's. So I'm just spitting all this shit on the mic, and nobody knew what to do. Like, when everybody's talking about racism and stuff, everybody claps, right? When I talked about the homeless thing, it was like people didn't know what to do. They're like I talk about in my movie review of District 9. It was the same thing. Like, people didn't know how to react, because who's talking about homelessness? Nobody ever is. Even though it's Sacramento gained international news for the issue, including the United Nations submitting a 4-page report of the inhumane conditions that of the homeless in Sacramento. Only place in the whole United States that United Nations visited and addressed the inhumane fucking conditions, right? So from day one, I'm jamming them up. I'm the only one there. And because it's my job as street outreach, it comports with my job to, I'm doing outreach. So I'm telling people about the homeless issue, homeless youth and stuff. So every day Occupy's there, and every day I'm showing up, and every day. And then they would have the general assemblies. And again, I'm not lying to you. I was the only person, and every day I kept injecting it into their public discourse, because all they would talk about was racism, sexism, and rights for gay people. That's all they would ever talk about. And I was the only person, and I showed up every day and continue and determined and vehemently just continue to inject the homeless thing every day, all day. And I would challenge them all the time. I'd be raising my hand and keep injecting the homeless. That's all I did, was continue to inject the homeless thing. And I did this for 10 days straight. I would show up and I would get up on stage in front of fucking 200, 300 people and talk about the homeless issue on the microphone, on the PA, in front of the whole General Assembly, and was basically pushing that they need to look at the homeless thing. It's international. Sacramento is the only city in the fucking entire country that is getting international news for the inhumane treatment of homeless people. And you guys don't understand. I was the only motherfucker, and I showed up on the daily every day. Anytime there was a General Assembly, I got up and it continued to inject it and inject it and inject it. And people didn't like me because of that. And I didn't care. I did not give a shit at all. And none of those people that were at Occupy, I had never seen them in my life. And I lived in Sacramento for like 25 years. Weird how all the people that of my friends in my circle that were politically charged, none of them ever showed up. They were never there. None of my friends. I was the only one. And someone else, there was talk that buses were coming in with these people. They were paid. All these paid activists were being bussed in and stuff. And it's all true. It was all fake. The whole Occupy thing was totally fake. It was just like everything that the liberals do is fake. They're fake people. They're just fake people. Again, I will reiterate, Malcolm X was quoted in the 60s saying, the liberals are more dangerous than the conservatives. They're both dangerous, yes. Nobody's arguing that. The argument is the liberals are worse, and they are. That's just it. I'm sorry. I don't care how non-political or apolitical a person is or whatever. The fact of the matter is the liberals are fucking worse than the conservatives. That's just the bottom line. That's all there is to it. And homelessness is a great tool to measure the authenticity of a liberal's fucking stance. So I've been doing this for years. I have been doing this for years. So I just kept showing up, and they didn't like it because all I would talk about is homelessness, and I didn't like them because all they'd talk about is racism and sexism and feminism. It was, they ignore the poor. They ignore the poor. And so, and it's a total contradiction. Like, if they care about equal rights of people and all this shit, why would they ignore the homeless? Like, those people are experiencing more inhumane treatment than anyone else. They're experiencing more inequality than any people of color or any. See. And so for 10 days or more straight in a row, I continued. And every day I would get more aggressive, and I would get more well-spoken. I would be more prepared. And it got so bad that more people started agreeing with me, just people in general. I had no friends there. I didn't care. But more people started, because you have to agree that there's something wrong here. Like, why would they ignore the homeless when Sacramento has such a homeless problem that it's getting international news? And my arguments are true. The homeless face more prejudice and inequality than any people of color. So, dude, and so this is back in 2011 and 2012. And this is when I first really started questioning the liberals and their so-called quest for equality. Equality for everybody but the homeless, but those most in need, suffering most. And so I just continued. And the reason is because that's what Occupy is all about. What I am saying aligns perfectly with what Occupy is supposed to be about. But what Occupy was supposed to be about and what it truly was were two completely different things. And so I was the guy that kept showing up, calling the whole fucking thing out for what it really is. Tactfully so. Tactfully. Like, I wasn't going in there like some, tea partier or something. I was tactfully presenting my case. And appropriately. I was doing it appropriately. That's what I'm saying. It was all part. What I was doing was what Occupy, the spirit of Occupy was all about. And the majority of all these other people, they didn't even have the spirit of Occupy in them at all. The majority of them were trust fund cunts who were fucking, students at the university, Sacramento University. And just a bunch of fucking just uninformed, just totally out of touch people that they were just there to complain and blah blah blah. I got interviewed by the news, and I told them the same thing. I work for a homeless youth organization. We have no funding. The shelter has only 6 beds, and we have to the home. It has to not only uh, um, you know um, cater to the homeless youth, a 6 bed shelter for the entire city of Sacramento, and not only the entire city of Sacramento, but every surrounding county as well. And there's a massive homeless problem in this city, and that they're using all these millions of dollars for a basketball fucking arena, and meanwhile they're cutting funding to the winter overflow shelter. I explain all this eloquently because it's my job. So I did all this eloquently at the time when the news interviewed me, and they were just looking for some crazy. See, the news wanted to try to portray it as just a bunch of crazy people, and that's why um, I was like, "Are you looking?" When they were walking around, they were trying to interview all the crazy people, and I already look crazy, especially when I got my beard, and my long hair. So as they walked by me, I was like, "Are you guys looking for somebody to interview?" And they got all excited because they're like, "Oh, this guy looks like another crazy guy." And so then they interviewed me with the camera, and I just started laying down facts about homeless youth in Sacramento and the homeless problem in Sacramento, and how nobody gives a shit about any of it, and it's a massive growing problem that's like an exponentially growing inequality issue and everything else. And there was a guy who was a nurse practitioner at the local hospital who was standing right next to me when did the interview, and then they interviewed him too. And then when they were done, he came to me and told me that I did a really good job, which I know I did. It's my job. Well, so then when they aired all that night on the news, they didn't show that nurse, because the nurse was talking about how the health industry is all fucked up and everything else too, and they didn't show his interview. They didn't show my interview. What did they show? All the crazy people that were all drugged out and stoned and drunk and causing drama. Anyways, so this goes on and on, like the whole Occupy thing, and I pushed it so hard that so many other people started to create a buzz at the Occupy, where a lot of other people started chiming in on the homeless thing. And then it started to gradually kind of snowball to where more and more people were talking about the homeless thing, and it threw a massive wrench in the whole operation, because like all the people that were the hierarchy, because it was supposed to be a leaderless movement, but you could see like a group of people taking it over as the leaders, as the unspoken leaders. And they had a particular agenda that they wanted the Occupy movement direction they wanted it to go, which was racism, sexism, gay rights, etc. And so when this homeless thing started to snowball, and I'm telling you, it was me. I was the only one, and I was persistent every day. At any opportunity, I was very persistent, and I was very good at what I did, because it was my job. And so it started to snowball to the point where they started including it as one of their daily topics of discussion. And then it ended up growing bigger to where they formed like a rally that was going to address, one of the main things was going to be about homelessness in Sacramento, and it was going to be at the Capitol. And so I was there when they were doing like a business type meeting, and these motherfuckers are corrupt as fuck. So they created a bunch of handbills for it, and they were handing them out for the last couple of days for this rally that was going to take place at the White House, at the Sacramento Capitol, that was going to include, one of the main parts was going to be homelessness. And they put the wrong date and time on the pamphlet, and they had already handed out like thousands of these pamphlets. And then on top of that, they had double booked some other event at the same time that they were going to have the rally at the Capitol that was going to be largely about homelessness. So then I was standing really close while they're discussing all this, and when the first person came up and in secret, like I was standing right there, they came up to the person who was in charge in the leaderless movement, and they showed him, and they were whispering and showing him the misprinted pamphlet that they had handed out thousands. And the chick, she was like, she took it and she goes, okay, she slipped it under a thing and said, don't tell anybody, because, and so they didn't tell people about the misprint on the pamphlet, the misprinted time and date, and also how they had double booked it with the other fucking rally. And so they kept it all a secret, and I was right there and saw it. And then that was like day 10. That's when I was like, fuck this. This is all bullshit. Then they, and I would show up on occasion just to keep a pulse. They let Mike Johnson, who was the mayor at the time of Sacramento, there was already, dude, everybody knew Mike Johnson during his career as a basketball player was sleeping with underage girls and shit. And everybody knew, and they allowed him at the General Assembly. And there was probably 25, 30 people waiting in line at the General Assembly to go up and talk on the mic. And they let Mike Johnson bypassed the entire fucking line and bumped him straight up to the top and had him talking, and he was spewing his typical politician bullshit, and you only get 5-minute limit on the General Assembly, and he was going on for like 10 minutes. Like, everybody that's a real person, like all the old timers that were involved in the Vietnam protests and stuff, they were all fucking just disgusted with Occupy. Oh, the only people that weren't were all these newbies that just want to talk about racism and sexism and stuff. Like, the whole thing was total garbage. And you know, some of my acquaintances started coming in as I was leaving. They were coming in, and I was trying to tell them, I was like, you guys, this is all bullshit. This is all fake, scripted. This is complete bullshit. It's a total shit show. This Occupy thing is total shit. It isn't even real. It's all actors and stage. It's bullshit. And then they went in, and then they participated for a couple weeks, and then they didn't listen to me. They thought, I was going to do something, and they were all pulling the typical tropes like sexism and feminism and stupid shit. And then they started seeing it too, and a lot of people saw it. Is the people, and then and also my final day, I went and announced it at one of the biggest General Assemblies. I waited in line as soon as I got up to the General Assembly, and I just addressed the whole crowd that I'm not participating anymore in this Occupy, because the list. So Occupy had a manifesto, and each city kind of edited the manifesto to that city's own more personalized issues. And the Sacramento Occupy was a lame, stupid fucking manifesto, and that's what I told them why I was leaving, is that, like, the manifesto, it's just all it is a list of middle class grievances, and that's all it is. The whole manifesto is just a list of middle class grievances. It ignores the homeless, and we've got this massive homeless problem that's gained international fucking news in this city, and there's a massive constitutional rights violations with the homeless on the daily. They're unconstitutionally policed, and this manifesto, all it does is list all these middle class grievances. That's it. And that I'm not here to fight for middle class grievances. I'm here to address grievances of people that are more in need than the middle class. And as a result of the direction that the Occupy has gone, I'm backing out. I'm no longer participating. And I fucking, like, 200-300 people, and they all just kind of like passive, just NPCs. They're all just a bunch of NPCs and agent provocateurs. That's all there was at Occupy. And then shortly after I left, a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks later, it was over. Like, the whole thing it turned into such a circus fucking joke that people stopped showing up. And the other thing that's funny too is Occupy has a Facebook page, the Sacramento Occupy, and so I would go to the Occupy, and I would report on all this corruption that I saw and everything. I was calling out Occupy, and then I would like read the different. There was tons of people that were going into the Facebook page, the Occupy Sacramento Facebook page, and complaining because they didn't go to Occupy to hear a bunch of people talking about homelessness. So even after I left, the homelessness thing kept snowballing and snowballing, and like a bunch of homeless people started showing up, and it just like got to the point where like all these homeless people were showing up to eat the food and all this shit. It was glorious. Like I fucking took down that fucking Occupy. I had a huge hand in taking down the Occupy, and I'm totally proud of it. I'm totally proud of it because it was all nothing but just libtard bullshit. And that was when I first started questioning the liberal ideology. By 2016 with Trump and everything, I already know. The liberals are more dangerous than the conservatives. Malcolm X is right. No matter how apolitical or non-political you are, one thing that is true that Malcolm X pointed out is that the liberals are more dangerous than the conservatives. They're both fucked up. That is not what is in argument here. What is that the liberals are worse than the conservatives. And that's what it is. That's what so much of this is about for so many people. Well, definitely people like me. When I read Malcolm X quote saying that, I understand what he's saying on a personal level. I know this is just it's empirical truth, dude, that the liberals are just worse than the conservatives. They're both terrible. Again, that's not what's in question. What is in question is that the liberals are worse, and they're worse. But dude, I took down that fucking Occupy by myself single-handedly. I went in alone. I walked off, and within 2 weeks after I walked out, the whole fucking thing came crashing down. So